So for me, growing up as a Hindu, I think faith and the environment have always been connected in everything that we do, whether it's our rituals or our prayers. One of the key texts, the Bhagavad Gita, which is one of the most ancient scriptures in Hinduism, talks about three principles which I think really highlight this really well. One of them is dharma, which means, a lot of people translate this as duty. I like to think of it as responsibility. And there's two types of dharma. There's swadharma and there's sanatan dharma. Sanatan dharma means eternal duty or eternal responsibility, and it's seen as your relationship with, you might want to call it a divine source, a creator. Essentially, it's your spiritual life that kind of goes beyond this life into other lifetimes. Whereas your swadharma is your earthly duty, so it could be your job, your relationship with your family, your peers. It's kind of that duty you have to everybody else around you. And this also extends to the earth as well. So what are we doing to maintain our duty to everybody around us in a harmonious way? And it's just teaching us to live with the laws of nature and not to kind of exceed what we require. And that really leads me on to the next point about ahimsa. Ahimsa literally translates to non-violence. And although this relates obviously to action towards other people, but it's also in relation to the environment, to animals, and also to ourselves. So it's actually an all-encompassing philosophy to live your life with ahimsa. So with regard to animals, there's a direct connection. That's why a lot of Hindus revere, worship the cow, because it's seen as a symbol, or it's a symbol for a mother. And then the final principle that leads on to is samadarshana, and that means equal vision. So kind of similar to the principle of ahimsa, non-violence, it's recognizing that everything, not just humans, has a spiritual origin and source. So even though, we look different, or, you look different to an animal, or you might be more intelligent, that doesn't make you superior in one sense. You are equal in quality spiritually, but you just look different materially. You must respect that in the same way that you would respect another person or your family member. So this nicely kind of all-encompassing word is Vasudeva Kutumbakam, which is where you recognize the whole world as your family. But I think one story that really kind of encapsulates our current crisis is the story of Krishna and Kaliya. So Krishna is seen as God within the Hindu tradition, and he came down in a human form 5,000 years ago. And he lived as a cowherd boy in a very small town in the north of India. And there was this demon serpent. And this serpent came to the village and was polluting the river. And the river's name was River Yamuna, which is still a river present in India today. Because the river was polluted, none of the villagers wanted to go to that river, because anyone that drank the water would die and be poisoned by the waters. So people become very afraid of this serpent, Kaliya. Krishna didn't obviously want this. He wanted the river to be accessible to everybody, and it shouldn't be that we cannot go to one of our natural spaces. So he approached Kaliya, and then there was a huge battle between them. And Kaliya was on the brink of death. And at that very moment, Krishna says, "I'm not going to kill you," and spared him, but says, "You must leave the village and go away, and also promise that you will never poison any of the rivers again." So from that story, I think there are two very important messages. Firstly, I think a lot of us can relate to this pollution of the environment, of the rivers. We don't have serpents nowadays. We have many other things that are polluting the rivers, and I won't go into that. The point that Krishna makes by going there, wanting to clean the waters, make it available for everyone, is kind of our position and how we should all be reacting to our environment. If we see some sort of injustice going on, we should also be taking a stand to make sure that we can do something about it. But what's really pertinent in the story is that even though the cause of this was this serpent, this snake, poisoning the river, there was compassion at the end. And say, actually, I realize what you're doing is wrong, but if you can change your ways, I'll give you another chance. So with our activism, there should always be this element of compassion and just recognizing when that needs to come into play. I think what we're seeing with activism in general is that it can become very polarized. You will have one side very kind of strong, energetic, leading the movement, which is absolutely required. But then you always get this kind of countercurrent of people that are a bit apathetic, not really interested. But what we really need in the environmental debate and to create real change is that everybody should be involved and taking responsibility for what's going on. So really taking on that concept of dharma, recognizing that the environment is everybody's duty and responsibility. It is not just for the few that are, willing to go out and protest, because we need a lot more than that. And secondly, I think what's really important is that although we're conducting work to solve the climate crisis, we have to look beyond that. What is the origin of this? Why have we kind of got to this place in the first place? And at the heart of it, it's that we are taking more than we need. And so what Hinduism teaches is that you have to get to the root of the issue, and that's within the heart of every person. How do we tackle that? We have to start looking within ourselves and asking those deeper questions. There's one story of one spiritual teacher who was in a debate about climate change. And the health minister and environmental minister questioned him. They said that, we're doing all of these policies to solve climate change, but what are you doing? You're just meditating all day. And his reply was that if you don't change the hearts of people and teach them to approach every person with love, care, and sensitivity, as well as the environment, then they're just going to pollute the world all over again if you don't change what's inside of them first. So activism should always be combined with this kind of approach, compassion, love, and developing those inner qualities